All right, so I'm Miss Jennifer again from the Pendleton County Extension Office, and today we are going to be doing our next lesson in our series on stress and how to deal with that stress. So in the past we have talked about laughter and how that can help to relieve stress. Last time we talked about exercise and how that can help us to not be as stressed. It can help us get our frustrations out a little bit. It can help us keep our body healthier so that stress doesn't affect us as much. And sometimes just taking a walk can help to relieve stress a little bit. So those are all good things, and we're going to keep on with that series. And today we're talking about water, hydration really, but water in particular. And again, by keeping our body as healthy as we can deal with stress better. Our body can deal with stress better. When we're not well, when we're dehydrated, when we're sick because we're not eating right, then stress affects us more than when we are doing those things that we should. So today we're going to talk about water is the liquid of life, and water is truly the liquid of life. Often we don't think about the many ways it affects our lives. We use water each day for things like drinking, cooking, cleaning, even in manufacturing and irrigation and transportation, power generation, recreation. So lots of things that water is used for. So it's also important that we help keep our water systems clean because we want what we're drinking and putting in our bodies to be clean. And if our area were to get, I think most of our areas around here, we get it from the Licking River. So if people are dumping their sewage into the Licking River, or all the fertilizer from a field is going into the river, or somebody is boating and their engine is leaking oil and that gets into the river, that goes into our water supply. And that's not really something we want to be putting in our bodies. So it's important for all of us to help keep our waterways clean and keep up on things like that to help others to help keep it clean as well. So water has a role in our health, which I already mentioned. So the human body is approximately 65% water. This water performs a lot of functions that are critical to staying healthy. When we can live for a long time without food, we can survive only a few days without water or some other liquid to hydrate our bodies. So water is important in many of our body's activities, and these activities include transportation, which is our blood system, which is 83% water. And so if we get dehydrated, our blood pressure drops, which is not a good thing. And I don't know if you've ever noticed if you poke yourself, if you bleed a lot, that means you're nice and hydrated. And if you don't bleed hardly at all, then sometimes you're not hydrated enough. And so therefore, the blood's not moving like it should. So it's very important to stay hydrated for our circulatory system, for that blood to be doing what it needs to do. For lubrication, so water is present in the mucous linings of organs and the fluids between internal organs. These fluids make movement easier and reduce friction within the body. Water also lubricates your joints, making it easier for bones to slide and move. So not just our blood, everything in our body needs water to keep moving and moving like it should. And the mucous linings of organs, so they're talking about our lungs has a mucous lining, our intestines have a mucous lining, our stomach has a mucous lining. And when we're dehydrated again, there's not enough fluid in that mucous lining, and so it can't protect those organs like it should. So we might be more likely to get an infection in our intestines if that mucus is kind of hard and brittle, and things get cracked and can slip between it. So another reason to stay hydrated. Digestion. So in the digestive tract, which we were just talking about, water is present in the mucus and in the salivary juices, which is the saliva we make. If we're dehydrated, as you know, it's hard to make saliva. So if we try to eat something, it can be really difficult. So we've got to make sure that we stay hydrated. The saliva helps to break down certain foods and transport the food through the digestive system. So it's also important for temperature control. If we're dehydrated, our body can't regulate our temperature as well, and so we might get heat stroke faster, or we might have hot flashes, even when we're not an older lady who would be having hot flashes. And sometimes it makes us more cold. So it's a normal temperature maybe. We're sitting on the couch and it's a normal temperature in the room and we're just freezing. And sometimes that's because we're dehydrated, and that causes the blood to not circulate as well, and that causes us to feel cold. So it all works together. On to synthetic reactions. That's a big word, isn't it? So within our bodies, many synthetic reactions take place, and some of them involve water. For example, water plays an important role in the digestion of protein and carbohydrates. Water also helps to build hormones and enzymes that control reactions in the body. So when we're building muscle, when we're exercising, we actually need to stay hydrated, as I said last week, partly to help with that breakdown of the protein. And even when we're exercising, we are breaking down protein, even though we're building muscle. It's breaking some down and building up some new. And water is part of that process. So we need to make sure we stay hydrated. And then for waste removal. So our bodies produce waste in many ways. Water plays a key role in removing them through our kidneys, which is how we urinate, and through our large intestines, which is how we defecate. Now, stools, which is our poop, should be a certain consistency. Otherwise, it might not be very healthy. So if they are too loose and too watery, that is not good. It usually means we have an infection of some sort and we might need an antibiotic. Or if they're too hard, like a deer stool would be, or it's hard to go sometimes because it's so hard, that's not healthy either. And that shows that we are dehydrated. That's part of constipation. And that can lead to more colon cancer down the road. Because you're affecting your intestines, you're stretching them out when your poop gets that hard. And if things aren't moving through like they should, then it can cause problems many, many years later. So it's important to stay hydrated to help with all of that. So we need to reach a balance. Each day, the human body strives to maintain a balance as it takes in and loses water. Thirst is the main trigger that reminds us that our bodies may need fluid. When intake and output of fluids are unbalanced, we'll notice a change within our bodies. Over time, we'll become dehydrated, and if we lose more fluid than we consume. Likewise, we retain fluid or make more frequent trips to the bathroom when we take in more fluid than we need. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever heard the story, true story, about someone who was doing a challenge, and it was a water drinking challenge. And I don't remember how many gallons of water they drank in a very short amount of time, but it killed them. So too much water is also a bad thing, just like too little water is a bad thing. And with our bodies, everything needs to be in moderation. Too much of anything can be a bad thing. So while we need to keep hydrated, we don't want too much fluids, or we're losing too much salts and too many electrolytes if we're peeing too often, or it might mask something, like we might have diabetes, which makes us pee more, but if we're drinking so much that we're peeing a lot all the time anyway, we might miss that symptom and not realize that something is going on. So, enough hydration, but not overhydration. Through the years, the amount of water or fluid the body needs to work properly has been debated. So in general, adults need 6 to 8 cups of water each day, as well as most teenagers. And water is not just water, and we'll talk about that in a minute. It's a fluid. So this all depends on our body size and how active we are as to how much we really need. So on to the next page. So our sources of water, and here we'll talk about those fluids, not just water. So the water we need each day to maintain our health comes from a number of sources, including the beverage that we drink. Water, fruit juice, and milk are all good sources of fluid, as are decaffeinated beverages and soft drinks. Now let me put a little thing in there on the soft drinks. And I was going to talk about this a little bit later, and I might touch on it then too. But if you're drinking soft drinks, decaffeinated is better than caffeinated, because the caffeine in soft drinks, as well as in coffee and tea, actually acts as what's called a diuretic, and it makes us pee more. So we're not hydrating when we're drinking those things. We're actually causing our bodies to lose more fluid. But yet, we don't want sugar-free sodas, like Diet Pepsi or Diet Coke or Diet Sprite, because that has fake sugar in it. There's a bunch of different types of fake sugar. There's sucralose. Off the top of my head now, I can't think of them all. But there's a whole bunch of different fake sugars. Those are chemicals that are put in there so that people aren't getting calories. And while that might be okay for a diabetic whose blood sugar might spike if they were getting all those calories from sugar, it's not good for the rest of us because it's our chemical that our body doesn't know what to do with. And so we don't know for sure if it builds up in our body or if it all leaves when we pee and poop. So if you're diabetic, that's okay to have that in moderation. If you're a teenager, you should not be drinking anything with fake sugar in it. I was going to get, for these water bottles, I was gonna get you little packets to put in to flavor them. And the 2 stores I looked at in Falmouth, the only things I could find had fake sugar in them. So I did not buy them for you because I don't want you to have them. So if you have regular High C or regular Kool-Aid or something like that to add some flavor, that's fine. But don't use the things with the fake sugar as teenagers because that's not gonna be good for you in the long run. Again, as I said, it's a chemical that your body doesn't know what to do with. So just kind of keep that in mind. So we'll talk about some other ways that we can flavor our water if we don't like it just water. So on back to the caffeine. So again, say we're drinking tea, if it's decaffeinated, then that doesn't act as a diuretic, so that's okay. But caffeinated tea is gonna make us pee a little bit more. Now, if you're just drinking 1 8-ounce cup, that's fine. But if you're one of these people that sits there and that's all you drink all day is decaffeinated tea, then it's gonna actually cause you to be dehydrated instead of adding fluid to your system. All right, so beverages that contain alcohol also result in fluid loss. And that's not just alcohol, that's also sugar alcohol. So again, that's another type of fake sugar, like sorbitol, and that would be listed on the ingredients on something. A lot of times you might see that in chewing gum, and so that's not a good thing either. We don't like sugar alcohols, again, unless we're a diabetic, and we don't want those calories from sugar to spike our blood sugars. So, in choosing what we need to drink, we need to consider our needs for additional calories and nutrients, as well as our need for fluids. So, water is more readily absorbed by the body than other beverages, but it can also pass through the body more quickly sometimes. So, milk and juices and other healthy beverages may provide nutrients we need, as well as fluid for hydration. Now, they don't really talk about things like sports drinks in this paper, and those are okay if we're working out and we're losing salt, or to have a little bit now and again. But kind of like the soda pop, we don't want it very often because unless we're losing a lot of salt, we don't want to be putting a lot of salt back into our system. We can, again, have too much of something, and that's one way we might get too much salt or too much potassium, and that can cause problems. So the foods we eat can supply an important part of the water that we need. This is especially true with a diet high in fresh fruits and vegetables. So there's a little table here on the side of the page that talks about the water content of some things. So like an apple is 84% water by weight, a banana 74%, a cucumber 96%, iceberg lettuce 96%, watermelon 92%. So out of those foods, the banana won't give you quite as much fluid as the apple, the watermelon, the lettuce, things like that. So, as I said, it's not just drinking water per se, but getting things that add fluid into our bodies. A lot of times, if we're working out before Gatorade was around, people would drink a little bit of pickle juice, especially dill pickle juice, because that would add potassium back to our system and a little bit of salt. So if you don't have Gatorade available and you've been working out a lot, have a little bit of pickle juice. But again, not something you want to drink all day, every day, because you don't need those extra nutrients most of the time. But when you're kind of thinking of your overall hydration, think about the foods that you're eating. Even something like macaroni that is cooked in water, it's absorbing that water, and so that's actually adding some water back to your system. Even something like a cracker has a small water content to it, even though it seems very dry. So don't necessarily count your crackers, but something like pasta or oatmeal in the morning, because water has been added to it. Those things add water back into our system as well. And if we're eating, maybe eating soup as a meal instead of just something more dry is going to help add some fluid as well. So we're going to turn the page to page 4, and we're going to skip the public water system part, and we're just going to talk about bottled water a little bit. So it talks about how bottled water has become popular, right? Everybody, we see bottled water all over the place. And that is fine to drink, but when we do, we also want to be conscious of our environment and not be wasting all this plastic. So that's one reason why we sent you a water bottle. So if you're using tap water in this, or if you're putting water in from the school, if your school has a good water fountain that can fill a bottle, sometimes it tastes better out of a system like that filters it than just the regular city water supply. Or if you buy, instead of little bottles of water, you buy gallon-sized jugs of plain water, and you can fill your water bottle to take with you. And then make sure you're recycling any of these little jugs or bottles that you get, so that that's not causing as much harm to the environment if we're recycling them. So keep that in mind, because we don't want to ruin our environment, which makes our water less safe, while we're trying to stay hydrated and do the right thing there. So sometimes we might just have water in a cup that we have. So this is actually cold water. I keep it in my mug. I don't like anything cold. I never have, so I never drank enough water until I realized as an adult that I just don't like things cold. So I would get my water and leave it set at room temperature, and then I can drink it. Same with some people would only drink things if they've got ice in them, and that's fine. But kind of pay attention to that with you and realize what works best for you so that you stay more hydrated. So even not just with water, even with juice, if I'm having cranberry juice, I have to put it in a cup and let it sit on the table for a couple of hours before I'll drink it, because I don't like cold things. So keep that in mind just to help you stay hydrated. Even with foods that I eat, if I keep my fruit in the refrigerator so that it doesn't spoil, and I'm gonna eat one during the day, I need to take it out a couple hours ahead of time, otherwise I won't eat it. So keep those things in mind. For ways that you can get some good hydration and stay hydrated. And to tie that back into our lessons on stress, remember, the healthier our body is, the more our bodies can handle stress. And then also just knowing that we're doing something good for our bodies can help to relieve stress a little bit. Because a lot of times we don't have control over the things that make us stressed. But we do have control over making sure we drink 3 glasses of water a day and eating some strawberries or watermelon or lettuce or whatever that might be. So keep those things in mind, and that'll be it for today. And then next time, I didn't look ahead. I'm not sure what we're doing next time. So you're on vacation next week, so we won't be meeting then, which is why we met today. So I think it's the 21st maybe of the month before we meet again. But we'll have another lesson then and some goodies hopefully to send along to you. But thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you all later.